Hi there, today I'm here to introduce you to my latest pattern, which is the Gemini duo of bags. This pattern comes with two bags, one which is the large bag just here with the long strap, and then a smaller size bag which is just here that we need to make so that this can be a complete set. Today I'm going to be using the Janome UK Professional sewing machine, and I shall be using the 1/4 inch seam allowance foot, which is foot 0 on the machine, to make sure I've got lovely accurate seams as I work through. It is really important that we maintain that consistent 1/4 inch seam allowance where it's needed to make sure that all of our squares, all this detailing in the front here, comes together quite beautifully. So that's really, really important. And if you do stop and start on your project and you do move between machines, please be aware that that might cause some changes. Also, do be aware that in the instructions I do give approximate measurements of what these panels will be when they're complete. Again, please don't take this as is. Everybody's settings are slightly different, meaning that your final measurements will be slightly different to mine perhaps. But don't worry, it will never be drastically out of place, and you will be able to soon make everything fit to match because there's no templates. So it will become very comprehensive and clear to you as you're working through this machine. We need some fabrics, and today I'm going to be using the Tilda range to carry on to complete this make. If you want to see how I made this bag, head over to Sewing Street. I was on TV in February 2024 introducing this. I was thinking it was January, but I was on in February. So I was on in February 2024, so you can see how I started to put this panel together. I'm showing this one today, the smaller make, because it is slightly easier than this one, and I did obviously give you quite a detailed account, but the front panel here is made in exactly the same way, but this one has got a little lining and a little pocket top here as well, but effectively everything else is pretty much the same. Okay, so to get started, we are going to start on this middle section here. You've got an 8-page booklet to follow, plenty of these available on my Etsy store if you haven't managed to grab one just yet. And as you might expect from me, lots of clear instructions, a very clear, detailed cutting table, lots of photos throughout with a lovely number system so you won't get stuck. And if you are looking for inspiration of how this came out and you want to hear about other people's experiences, head on to Instagram, head on to Facebook, onto my Facebook page. But I also have another Facebook page now called the So Mindful Makers, where you can see other makers sharing their bags for all of my patterns, so you get a good feel of how it can come out in different fabrics. So let's get started. So the first thing you're going to need to do is choose your 8 fabrics for the front panel. And when you have those, you just need to cut them into long strips, which we're going to line up and just join together to make one big square. When you have that in place, you're just going to rotate it and you're going to cut it into increments, and that will give you 5 strips like this. As you lay them out, every other one you're just going to rotate until you've got a long strip that then just needs reattaching. So I've got to that stage, so I'm going to drop the camera down and I'm going to show you how I pin mine together. So those are my strips, and as you can see, I've rotated them, and we can tell because we've got the blues here and then the blues here in between. All I now need to do is connect them, making pairs. I'm going to use my little pins here, my magic pins, and I think it's quite important to join these at every single join line. So I'm just going to take one piece and lay it down on top of another, like so. And you'll see that my seams are going in the opposite direction to each other. And I'm going to nest one inside another so that they really come together nicely. We call that locking the stitches. And I'm going to pin in such a way. And I am going to pin at each of the ends as well. And it might seem like I'm using an awful lot of pins for this little section, but I really want my point to come out right on in the right way that I want. So I'm just going to work my way along. No point in rushing. If they don't quite meet, just give one of them just a little pull, just a gentle pull, and you'll be able to ease that into position. We're going to work along, and when that's done, I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew at 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to use a small stitch length of about 1.8, and I won't be reversing at either of the ends. So you can see there's a lot of pins there, but they are all perfectly meeting on the ends. So I will take this to the sewing machine. So I've just started sewing, and you can see that I'm running the edge of the fabric along the very edge of the foot. And because I have pinned in the direction that I have, I feel fairly secure in sewing over the pins. I won't do this all the way through my work, but just on these points I'm really sure I don't want to lose at all. My cat's come in to join me. He's not very happy because it's raining outside. Just removing all the pins from this piece I've just sewn. So yeah, it's raining outside. It's really not a nice day today, and he does love to be outdoors. So right, so that's one piece done. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue doing the others, but between each section I'm going to press these seams and then press them over to one side. Max, it's not practical. I'm so sorry. So sorry, everyone. So I've sewn my other pair, and now all I need to do is join them all together to make one full strip. The panel is now complete, looking very clean and nice. What you can do if you want to make this really flat is grab some of your steam on your iron and then pop the clapper down on top, and that will really help that be nice and flat. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our two contrast flange panels here, and I am going to fold them wrong sides together and iron them down the length of the fabric. Like so. When they're ironed, just place them along the top raw edge. Pin, then sew. One each end. Pinned, and now we sew. Okay, so I've just changed the angle of the camera so you can see more clearly about what I'm working on here. So I am just sewing along now, adding in those flanges. I'll do my best to keep my hand out of the way. No doubt I will forget, but I will do my best. Turn the speed up a little. Love this function on this machine. Allows me to slow things down as I'm getting started and then pick the speed back up again. And here you can see I've lined up the edge, but I don't actually need to lower the foot. I can just go ahead and start sewing and it will go along for me. Removing the pins this time as I go and snipping that thread. Now the next step is we've got 4 top and bottom pieces, and all we'll be doing here is joining them up one on top of another, 2 at either end. So straight over the top, lining up those edges once more and sew along that edge. And then I will just flip that fabric back and give it a quick press. My cat is proper whiny today, and do you know, he never makes noises. But today he's proper chatty for some reason. He's not happy about this weather. Done a bit of a wobbly seam there, so I might just go back and redo that. Only slightly, just here, but I am going to go back and re-sew. That's better. We might as well do it right, haven't we? And I will press that one upwards as well. And then that is the top edge complete. And all I need to do now is repeat to do the bottom edge. So now this is completed, we're going to put in some side flanges. So in the same way, we've got some fabric here and we've just folded it wrong sides together, given it an iron, and I'm going to place the raw edges straight down here and sew. Obviously you need to pin, but just for a little bit of speed, I'm going to go straight in at the machine and hope I don't regret it later. I do always pin. I am a pin queen, really. I'm probably taking just a needle's width less than 1/4 inch in my stitching here, so that the stitching won't show in the next step. Got my next strip, rotate it around and I'll go straight in. Okay, so now I've got 2 more pieces of coloured fabric and I'm going to add those into the side. Now this one's directional, I've just spotted, so I better keep an eye on that. And then we're just going to sew this in. So this does want to be that accurate 1/4 seam now. Working all the way down. Turn up the speed a little. These are nice straight lines now. And get this final strip in, and then we will iron this outwards. And the flange will of course stay in place. That sound there was the machine just checking there's enough bobbin in the bottom, so we're not sewing without. Wonderful little addition to this machine, I have to say. Something I've never had before. So now I'm just going to press these fabrics outwards like so. That's that piece. So we have these 2 pieces now, which again we're going to iron wrong sides together down the full length. So now we're going to place the raw edges of this flange piece along the edge of our contrast fabric and sew at 1/4 inch. Those pieces now in place. So now we're going to attach the side panels. We are going to do more with this piece, but not till a little later. So we take our side panels, which I've got in my denim, and I'm going to lay this right sides together. Line up those raw edges and sew at 1/4 seam allowance. You can hear that noise. That's actually my cat now trying to get my attention by pulling the bin to pieces. He's a cheeky boy. Quite amusing little fella. He's taken to carrying bags around the house. So if he finds a bag, he'll hook it up in his mouth and walk around with it. Most peculiar. So I've fused my panel to some wadding, and I've actually gone for a lighter one than I normally use. I normally use like a foam, but I've gone slightly lighter just to have a bit of a play with a different product. Normally I sew here just straight lines straight across, and then I will stitch this panel down. But I thought I might have a quick look on the machine and see if there's anything that inspires me to pop in as a pattern. Now I'm still learning with all of this, so let's learn together and see if there's anything that looks like I might want to sew. It could be that my stitches are not set right, but as in all the plates and things like that. Very much learning, like I say. Patchwork piecing, free motion, ruler work, straight stitch. So I've got 2 pages. Hand lock QU or sashiko. Oh, that sounds interesting. So it wants me to put on foot A. So let me go find that out the box. So I've got my foot A. It's the most regular one you can see. So I'll pop that on. Now a sensible person would check this all out first on some scrap fabric, but there's nothing sensible about me. So let's have a look. So we've got sashiko 1, sashiko 2 or sashiko 3. So let's click on this one and see what happens. Yeah, so this screen is changing here. Oh look, so looks like we've got a long stitch, then 2 short ones and then 1 long one. Sashiko 1 is 3 long ones, then 1 short one. Oh, I quite like that. And sashiko 3, that's what I just showed you. So sashiko 2, it's 1 2 2 1 1 2 2 1. I think the sizing is just slightly different on this one. That's a bit longer. I'm quite attracted to this one. Let's go in. Let's give it a go. Just see what happens. I'll do it down the edge first and let's see. It's good to play together, isn't it? So let's see what this looks like. I'll do it down the edge first and I'll put the speed up and let's see if I've got everything right here. Can't see anything yet. It looks like it's making quite a dense stitch, which is quite nice actually. I ought to keep an eye on that bobbin thread. I'm sure it's going to get through it. When it's got to the end, I'll show you. This would be quite nice actually if you change your colour thread, so each row that came down, do it in a different colour. I feel like the blue might have sunk into the background just a little bit too much, blue against blue. This stands out so much more. I'm really pleased with my choice there actually. That stands out so much more. Really nice. Nice bit of definition there. So I might do a few more rows here and then I'll do a green over on this side just as I've got a bit of symmetry, and then a few more rows, and then I will stitch this flange into place. So the front and the back are done. Let me show you. Ta-da! And I got to be a little bit experimental. So I've gone for, like I say, a thinner foam. I do prefer to have the bigger, but just for this purpose, I wanted to see, it's always good to see your own makes in different products. So yeah, that's what I've done here. And of course, the ability to play with that sashiko stitching, which has come out really pretty. And then, like I say, what I've done is I have just straight stitched this down with a slightly longer stitch length of 3.5, and I've kept that pink in place as well. And then I've used my back panel and I just did some grid lines. I haven't fused it properly really. I've just done some grid lines. Again, normally I'd go horizontally, but I think that looks quite effective. Really pleased. So now we're ready to move on to the next step. So we're on day 2 of the make, and I've come out to my room and we're working on just to finish these front and back panels. Just in the bottom corners, each of the corners, we're going to measure across 1.5 inches and then up 1.5, draw a little curve, and we're going to remove them away. We're going to do that on the outside panels and the lining panels, and then we're going to go on to getting that zip ready for insertion. So the next step is to add the tab onto the closed end of the zipper tape. So it's open and free here. So when I pull this, it's going to close it. So on this end, we need to add our tab piece. So all I've done is I've folded it so it's right sides together, and then I've flipped back this edge on both sides. I line it up against the edge, and you can see I've drawn 2 markings, and that's where I'm going to sew. So that's now been turned through and given a good press, and I'm just going to push this inside, and when it's tucked nicely inside, I'm going to sew a little box all the way around to secure. I have a confession to make, people. I've been a bit of a wally. When we did all this stitching here, I actually meant to stitch it with the lining at the same time, like so. So it would all be one piece like that. I'm just going to basic stitching just for now. It won't affect the finish whatsoever, but just in case you're watching this and you think, well, I'm sure that the instructions said something different. It did. So the zip tab's in, and what I've done now, this has all been basted, stupid me, is I've bent the zip back here and pinned it, and then I've placed it 1 inch inwards. I have lined up the raw edge, which I'm going to sew along, and about 1 inch from the end here, I'm just going to pull this inwards so it kind of sews off. So I'm going to do it on that side, and then I will do the same with this piece to attach the other side as well. So here we are, that's the zip all in. So you can see it's just been left so it can move a little bit here, and then we've got the butler method at the end. So now we're ready to move on to inserting the gusset. So we're going to cut 1 long piece of denim, 1 long piece of this squidgy stuff inside, and 1 piece of lining, and we're going to fuse them all together. And if you want to, you can stitch them all together too. So the zip's all in place now. So I've gone along now and got my 2 binding pieces that just need to be attached to cover these raw edges. So I've just folded it wrong sides to wrong sides. Now it's up to you whether you want to make this a binding piece, but just for a bit of speed, I've actually just folded it into 2 on this occasion so that I can sew it, flip it up and over, and then stitch it again. And normally I would hand stitch this second row stitching as well, but again, I'm not going to today. Use a few clips just to hold, and sewing along. Sewing quite close to the edge at the minute, and I can work my way back if I wish, just to make it even closer to the zip tape. But I am using a lovely zip tape, so I really want it to show. So I'm thinking about that as well. So I'll take it out, we'll take a peek, and then we'll decide if we want to make it just a little bit. See, look at that, isn't that gorgeous? And that will go up and over, you see, and that'll be stitched into place. I am going to go back in again because it is very close to the edge, and just move it over slightly, and I'll just now reduce my stitch length down to a more conservative 2.5 and do that again. So turn my fabric around just to allow me to get a little bit closer. I haven't actually got my walking foot on right now. I'm using the I forget what it's called, but it's the little walking foot that I really love to use, that's quite narrow. It allows me to get in really nice and close to most things. So now if we look at that, got 2 rows of stitching in there now. That one just a little bit closer. That's lovely. And then that just needs to go and be flipped up and over and stitched into place. And normally, like I say, I would hand stitch that, but today I am going to go straight in with the machine. So I'll give it a quick iron and then get that stitched down. So do clip, don't be lazy like me again. Just work your way along and just make sure you cover up any previous stitch lines now, so it looks nice and tidy. And then we just repeat for the other side. There we go. So it definitely looks better if you do hand sew it, I wouldn't deny that. So do consider doing it at this step. So I've got the gusset piece and I have fused it all together, and I've cut it longer than it needs to be. So I'm going to show you how I get around if this ends up being too long. But the first thing we need to do is on one piece, we need to attach our piece of binding. Now on the instructions, it tells you about putting the denim on the outside, but I'm going to go with this fabric on the outside this time. So I'm going to start off instead by attaching this to this edge just here, stitching it along, and then I'll iron it up and over, and I'll top stitch it from the side where I'm going to see it most. So the front and back's done completely. And all we need to do now, oops, on it, is attach the gusset all the way around the side. Now we need to make sure that we've got the right length on this. So I've cut it all a little bit longer. It's all been fused together, those 3 layers, and I've attached the binding to the top piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top and I'm clipping it so that this is now the outside piece. And I'm going to clip it all the way down and around. As I get to the corners, I might want to add some little snip marks into the gusset just to help it go around those little curves. So I'll just do that now. Just a few little snips, and then it will fan itself open like so, just so it'll sit nice and close, because we need to keep those edges so that they are all, you know, all the raw edges are still meeting. It's easy for the gusset to kind of draw in a little bit. We don't want that to happen. So if you could only see my floor right now. I have cleaned up the mess that Max made yesterday. He wasn't very happy about that, so he went inside and he pulled all the washing off my area. I think it was like a little punishment. Yes, he did carry on being a bit cheeky yesterday. So I'm working around that curve, getting that in, and I'm working back now up that final side. And just as I get to the top, cut this really, really long actually. Just as I get to the top, oh, let me just pull that too, then you'll be able to see better. I think I've flipped my fabric somehow. There we go. So that's all clipped in, you see, all the way around. And then as we get to the top, I can see where it meets. So I know that I need to cut it off about there. So I'll cut it, I'll unclip these few, and I'll add the binding to this top piece, making sure that I've got that caught in as well. That's what I will do, and then I will clip it and I will sew all the way around. So it's all clipped in and I'm going to start sewing. Sewing about 2 mil in, I should say. Pretty much following that basting line that I had to make earlier on. And I'll just slow down as I go around those curves. And I'm really pushing my fingers down with my left hand to make sure everything stays in place. So that piece is all now in, as you can see. So all I've got to do now is line up the opposite side and repeat. We're nearly there. Everything's made. All we've got to do now is cover up all these raw edges. So we're just going to take our final 2 pieces of fabric that you should have left, and we're going to bind them. And you can see I've put one on already. In exactly the same way, we're folding the fabrics wrong sides together, but the ends we're just folding it under a little bit so it's tidying those raw edges. Clip it all the way around, stitch it into place, and then flip it over and hand stitch it. And I would hand stitch this bit, it's going to look really nice. Well, it's 97% done. Here she is, with pins. This is Gemini, the smaller bag, and I'm really pleased with it. I did this one slightly different, so just to recap, I do suggest you use a bosal for this normally, and I've made that many now. I just thought, you know what, I'm going to try a different inside to see what happens to the structure. So I've used a much thinner an H640. It's definitely got that more squidgy feel to it, but it's still sitting quite nicely. So I'm really pleased with it. I changed the way I do my lines. So normally I go horizontally, and I've just done some angular, and I played with my machine and thought I'd have a go with that sashiko stitching, which I really think is quite pretty actually. And I like it on there as well. Yeah, I'm thinking that's really, really nice. The patchwork all came out nice because I was really careful with the foot that I used, made sure I was using the 1/4 inch setting on the machine. the correct 1/4 inch foot and used all the measurement guides around me to get the best results. And I do think I've got a really nice result in this bag. Lovely zip. If I pull it, there we go. So I've got the denim gusset, there we go, and the zip looking all fine and sparkly. Nice little pull on the end, so I can just grab it and pull closed, and there we go. Super cute. And I might just add a little something special down here, which I'll show you later on. I hope you found that useful, and if you've got any questions, do just pop them in the question box below, in the comments box below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. And if you need a copy of this pattern, just let me know, or head over to my Etsy shop to find out more. In the meantime, thanks for sticking with me, and I hope you enjoyed this make.